Hello and welcome to Todd Talk, where insight meets inspiration. I'm your host, Todd Hiller, and I'm an author, speaker, and longtime community leader, here to guide you on a journey towards fulfillment and balance. In every episode, we'll explore ways to fill life's emptiness, helping you uncover practical tools to create harmony, purpose, and happiness. Whether it's thriving in your career, nurturing personal growth, or simply finding joy in the everyday, Todd Talk is your space for real conversations and actionable advice. So let's thrive together, personally, professionally, and beyond. This is Todd Talk, and I'm thrilled to have you here.
Love it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Todd Talk. Today, I am honored to welcome Karen Dean, a resilience expert, best-selling author, dynamic speaker, and lifelong entrepreneur from Nova Scotia, Canada. Some people might not know that. We'll put it in there just in case. Karen brings over 25 years of experience helping individuals and organizations not just survive, but thrive. Her work is rooted in lived experience, offering real, gritty, and hard-earned wisdom that can't be learned from a book, but only through surviving life's toughest battles. Karen is the author of two impactful books, We Are Unbreakable, Raw, Real Stories of Resilience from Women in Nova Scotia, a Canadian bestseller that shares inspiring stories from 22 women, and Fierce and Fabulous, which is a self-love journal which provides readers with a daily practice to reconnect their inner self and become even more successful. Her entrepreneurial spirit has become recognized with 4 nominations for the RBC Canadian Women's Entrepreneur Awards. And notably, I love this part, she was one of only 2 women ever elected to the Farmers Dairy Board of Directors. And if you guys know me, am a farm kid, born and raised. So that did my farm kid heart good to hear that. So Karen is also deeply committed to her community, having raised nearly over $120,000 for families in need in Nova Scotia since 2018. And as a solo parent to 3 amazing children, Karen exemplifies resilience both personally and professionally. Her mission is to guide people on a path to greater success and fulfillment in their lives, careers, and entrepreneurial endeavors. How's that for a word? It's a lot of ease. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you. It never gets less weird to hear somebody say all that about you.
I know. Yeah, you're not kidding. Every time someone's like, "Can you write a bio about yourself?" I'm like, "I don't really want to." But,
yeah, but I will.
Yep. All right. So your journey is truly inspiring. I've read about you. We've spoken before. We've stayed connected on social media. So talk to us about a pivotal moment in your life that really shaped your perspective on resilience, because that's what you speak about.
Well, I wish there was only one, but there are several pivotal moments. I've said forever since my adult life started that I felt like I was meant to help people, and I didn't know what that looked like. So then I got into an abusive marriage, and that was one of the pivotal moments that was like, okay, this is meant to teach something and to help others. And I had business successes and business failures, and all of it melted together into more and more of, I need to just use these lessons to help other people. There were a lot more things after that. I have, of my 3 kids, 2 of them have had very serious health issues that almost life-threatening, and family dynamic things with toxic family members. There's just been almost everything you can imagine I have lived through. So there were pivotal moments all the time that kept adding to the things that I teach.
Yeah. So is that which one of those, or maybe all of them together, what really kind of pushed you to start a business and try to start working with people to help walk them through resiliency and all that kind of stuff?
Well, as funny as it sounds, after I removed the toxic family members from my life is when I started saying, I'm actually going to do this. Because when I had those people in my life, they were the people who do you think you are? You can't do that. You'll never be successful. Nobody wants to listen to you. Like those types of messages almost every day. So when I removed those people from my life, I went, wait, I can do what I want. I can live the dreams that I've had for all of my adult life. And I started doing it. And it was almost subconscious, actually, because I didn't go, there wasn't like a light bulb moment where I went, okay, I'm going to do this. It was just, you didn't hear those voices anymore. So it started to make sense to just carry that path.
Yeah. And that's beautiful, and so there's there's a quote that says, sit down on your bed some night and think about something, is by Jordan Peterson, that you could do, that you would do to really change your life. And in that same speech, one of the things they talk about is, okay, if there's things that you would do, is there something in the way, and what is it? And so many people have answered like, it's someone in my life who's supposed to be, quote unquote, close to me, that has forever like been a naysayer, and like they're just this giant roadblock. And unfortunately, it's a really difficult thing to come to terms with, because you're like, well, my family is supposed to be the people who love and support me. Like, I don't want to say that they're the problem, but sometimes they're the problem. And moving those roadblocks has, like, I think, done worlds of good for so many people. So it's interesting to hear you say firsthand, like, hey, it was definitely one of those family members that was legit, like they were the roadblock. So, okay, so toxic family members are gone. That's a good thing. Your business has been started. That's a good thing. Now you're a solo mom to 3 kids, 2 with very serious health issues. So how did you balance being a mom, a businesswoman, at-home nurse, and everything else that comes along with that?
I don't believe in the word balance. It was a juggle, and some days I had to drop certain balls in order to carry the other balls. So, for instance, in 2020, at the beginning of COVID, at the end of June of 2020, my son was diagnosed with cancer. So I basically had to drop my business, which is really hard to do when you're the only income earner in a house, and look after him. And having said that, I did also publish We Are Unbreakable during that time, because that was my distraction from him being sick. I thought I need to do something to help other people while I'm going through this hard thing. So I published that book. But after his treatment was over, I was completely burnt out. If anyone has ever supported someone through cancer before, you realize, which I had no clue until I lived it, that the trauma for the caregiver doesn't really start until the treatment's over. So I was, go, getting them to the appointments, talking to doctors, doing all the things. And then treatment ends. You don't talk to doctors anymore. You wait for almost a year to find out if the treatment even worked. And that's when everything hit me. And I had to just say, okay, I need to rest. And so I had to take some time off from my business, which was really hard because I went in debt to my eyeballs and, used every credit line I had to pay the bills. And so I don't think there's any answer to how you make that work, because some days you really have to be mom 100% and business gets put on the back burner. Some days it was the nurse. Some days it was, through former parts of my life, I was fighting someone in court to keep my kids safe. And you were just, it's a juggle, and it's okay, which thing needs my attention today? And you can't feel bad about the things that you have to put down, because it does work out eventually. But it's just really about giving yourself permission to look after what is the priority that day.
Yeah. And so I love the juggling analogy. Yesterday I was sitting in my truck at my office just recording some TikTok drafts. And one of the things I was talking about like balance and what happens. So I speak about burnout and kind of leadership development and personal development, but in my brain, I kind of said it out loud while I was recording that, as you're juggling all these things, the way we get so busy and the way people end up burned out and overwhelmed is that you don't pick up 50 juggling pins all at the same time and throw them in the air and try to catch them all. You start one at a time, and people just keep handing things to you. And as they hand them to you, you do your best to, to keep them up in the air. And so you're always juggling them. And it came to me like, as I was kind of speaking through this idea that, the goal is to take what one you need and set it down. Otherwise, eventually, you're just going to drop every single one and you're going to fail every person in your life. And so I have, the video itself was about like, it's okay to stop doing things. I talk a lot about like, just start, like get out of your own way, just start. I am a victim of, analysis paralysis sometimes. So I was trying to speak to the point of, listen, sometimes it's always good to just start, but sometimes you just have to stop. Like, stop doing the overworking, the over volunteering. Some things just have to get put on pause. So I love the juggling analogy that came out here, because this was just yesterday of setting things down. Otherwise, everything will just come crashing down all at once, and then you're left with, and especially in your situation as the only one, solo caregiver, solo mom, solo, business employee and owner. Yeah. If you fall and come crashing down, there's not much left. All right. Well, thank you. So you talked about, that was when you started publishing your book when your son got sick, or when you started writing the book. So how did that idea come about? Like, how did that spin up in your mind?
I'll try to make it as short as possible, but, in April of 2020, as I said before we went live, we had a mass shooting here in Canada, which is not a normal thing for us, especially in tiny little Nova Scotia. We're a very close-knit little province. And so 22 lives were taken. It was, a big deal over 2 days. It wasn't just a 1 hour thing. It lasted overnight and into the next day. This man was impersonating a police officer, driving a car that looked exactly like a police car, and was driving around the province, burning houses down and killing people. So his final victim was a good friend of mine who lived only about a 20-minute drive from my house. And when the police finally got him, he was actually driving her car. And she is this phenomenal person who was also a single mom and went through a lot of really hard things. And we just had this really close connection, even though she was one of those friends where you don't see every day, but when you see each other, it's like you just saw each other an hour ago. So we were really tightly connected, and I'm kind of into some woo-woo things, but I woke up one morning and I could very clearly hear her voice in my head saying, Karen, you need to do something to help women right now. You need to do something to help all of these people who are going through this terrible year, because it was COVID and the shooting. And now my son was sick, and she was actually a 2-time cancer survivor. And I thought, okay, how am I going to do this? And I just started brainstorming with myself while I'm sitting in my truck at the hospital. And I thought, you know what? Share the stories of the women and how this pandemic and everything that's going on is affecting our lives. Because I think here, at least, women handled it differently than men, because we got thrown back into a lot of traditional roles that we tried to get out of by building our careers and things. But in a lot of situations, the man was the one who still went to work, and the woman had to stay home and look after the kids because schools were shut down and daycares were shut down. And so it really just, I wanted to share those stories. So I sat in my truck. I can't take credit for writing the entire book because each woman wrote their own story. And I texted all these wonderful women that I've been blessed to meet over the years and said, can you write me your story of 2020? And can you have it to me next week? And they were like, seriously? And I said, yes, I don't want you to overthink it. I don't want you to stress about it. I want you, like, your authentic, genuine story next week, because I had a goal to get it out before Christmas, and I thought of it on October 15th. So I did it. I did it November 24th, which was the day after my son's birthday. I launched the book, and it's got some really inspiring stories about everything. And it's, some of them are like, this really sucks. But at the end of their story, it was, but it's okay. And then there's one mom who has just one child, and he was in his final year of school, and he was forced to stay home with his parents. And she's like, I'm thanking COVID, because now my son has to spend time with me before he goes out and starts his adulthood. And so that's what her chapter is about, is that it actually was a blessing for her, because she is a school principal. So schools were shut down. So she got to be home with her only child. So some really cool stories about how women looked at that time of our lives. And I wanted to share them because hopefully our children and grandchildren won't have to live through anything like that. And they can read those stories in the future and go, wow, that's really cool.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so while we're on the book topic,
It's on Amazon. There's a link on my website to Amazon Canada, but if you're in the U.S. or any other country, it'll just take you to your own country. But I just always caution people to go to the link on my website because there are 2 editions, and Amazon will not take the first edition off. It'll just tell you there are none left. So you have to go to the second edition.
All right, and that is I'll put your website. I'll put everything in the description of the podcast.
Correct.
It's KarenDeanSpeaks.com, right? Okay. All right. Easy enough. Okay. So your son gets sick. You write this book. Obviously, it did very well. You share all these beautiful stories from these other women. So you are that, but that's not where you stopped with the book. You went another step. Now the second book is a kind of like a self-reflection journal for people who might be struggling with finding themselves and figuring out where they want to
yes,
put their
energy. I
energy.
find, as I can't speak for men because I'm not one, but women, we tend to allow things in our lives mainly because we don't love ourselves. And that's something that I discovered when I went to see a life coach after my second very terrible divorce. And I just started practicing all of the things that are in the journal to try to help myself have more love for me, to be able to look in the mirror and not think, oh my gosh, some negative thought. And I thought, you know what? I think other women need these practices too, because I think we all suffer from that. And I think a lot of men do as well, that we don't. The challenge is that in the book, and whenever I do a speech about resilience and self-love, is to say out loud to yourself in the mirror, I deeply and completely love myself. And most people can't do that. And so that's what the journal helps with. It's just a daily practice. There's some writing at the beginning to talk about why these things work, because a lot of people just think, oh, that's woo-woo. It doesn't work. I'm here to tell you it does work. It changed my life. I have way better relationships now. I've had way more success in my businesses. I've been a better parent. I've been a better friend. All of that just because I changed how I look at myself.
Yeah, and I think and I'm the same. I can't speak for women because I'm a man, but in the world of men, I think so many, men and women both, but so many people are struggling, and some unfortunately even dying for lack of an encouraging word. They don't have someone in their lives to say, you're doing a good job. I love you. I believe in you. Yes, you can do this. And unfortunately, it's easy to say, but the natural progression should be, well, if no one is going to show up for you and say that to you, say it to yourself. But unfortunately, I think so often people don't, to your point, can't, or they don't know how. They don't understand to wake up and be that version of themselves for themselves, and they end up with this struggling mindset of there's nobody who's going to show up for me. And there's a lot of, I think, I don't want to say like not clinical depression, but there's a lot of negative emotion assigned to the fact that people worry that they're either not doing something right or they're not doing a good job because there's no external voice in their life saying, hey, you can do this. You've got this. You are capable. You are able. You are talented. And it's sometimes, I think, a really big wake up call to tell people, hey, listen, do that for yourself. Wake up in the morning. And there's a quote I love. It's from a Les Brown speech from years and years ago. He makes the whole audience say out loud, good things are supposed to happen to me. And I think that one phrase, everybody expects bad things to happen. They expect the breakup, the divorce, getting fired, the car breaking down, the flat tire, whatever it is, fights with their kids, fights with their family. So many people lose sight of the fact that good things are say it out loud and people are like, well, but yeah, good things are fine, but all these bad things have happened to me. But just because they have happened, it doesn't mean that there aren't good things out there.
And that's my lesson that I teach.
Like that.
And to go a little bit deeper on that, I don't know about you, you're a bit younger than me, but when I was raised, we were taught that to praise ourselves was arrogance and was conceit and it was egotistical and it was bad to do anything to praise yourself or to feel good about yourself. That's back to the voices I talked about earlier, but who do you think you are? Well, I'm me. And we deserve to celebrate ourselves. And I think it got programmed out of so many of us at a young age that wasn't acceptable to do. So I'm trying to bring it back, that it absolutely is acceptable to celebrate ourselves for whatever it is that we're doing. And like, my first husband, if someone said something kind to me, or even, told me I was beautiful, like, one of his buddies would say something about how good looking I was, and he would go, I'd say, how come you never say things like that to me? He said, I'm not saying that to you, it'll go straight to your head. So we have messaging from people in our lives that make it feel wrong to do that. And it is absolutely not wrong or bad at all to celebrate ourselves, and to, we don't even have to do it loudly, but even quietly to ourselves, to say, you know what, I am enough, and I love myself, and whatever positive affirmation we need to hear that day. It's important that we do that for ourselves, because we know at the end of the day, we are really the only ones that we have all the time.
Yep. Yeah. And, so my parents, I can't say that my parents ever kind of phrased it that way, that it was arrogant, but definitely my peers, I don't know if my brother listens to my podcast, but if you're listening right now, brother of mine, like he had always joked with me, like when I was younger, he said, you got to be careful, you think the world revolves around you. And I was like, well, I don't think that. But anytime I got like excited about something or was proud of myself or something, there was that immediate, stop it. You're being a conceited jerk, like knock it off. And I think that has, like you said, programmed out of so many people the ability to see ourselves as high achievers, as a force for good, as a net force for good, or a positive voice in this world, especially people, you and I specifically, who want to speak and encourage other people. It's even a really dangerous trap for us to fall into, of people saying, hey, listen, like, that's going to go, like you said, straight to your head. But the opposite side of that is, thankfully, I have a very good friend of mine now who's like, listen, you need to stop that narrative. Like, you are like a big deal. Like, if you look at the average cross section of people your age, I promise no one is on this march to change the world by speaking to them and helping them. And they said, it's not conceited. There is a, how do they put it? There's a giant difference and a fine line between being arrogant and conceited and being, I don't remember what word they use. But the idea is that you can be confident in yourself without being arrogant. And it's not being arrogant if you are just giving yourself credit for all the things you're working hard to do. I think the trap that we fall into is we never think it's like, we're not doing enough, or we're not doing big things, or, I've always said comparison is the thief of joy, because social media is over here with this person's curated perfect life. And we're like, oh, but look, they have more followers or more money or more, whatever. And so that is a huge, beautiful message to anybody listening. You need to start telling yourself that you are very impressive. Like, and I think most people sell themselves short on so many things. I remember when I first started, like the ideas of speaking and the ideas of this podcast, a friend of mine, and I miss him dearly, but I'm going to see him very soon, which is very nice. He had said, like, have you ever thought about the number of things that you do? And I said, I don't understand the context of the question. And he gave me this giant list, from fire department to still managing the farm where I grew up, to speaking, to a full-time job, to teaching at the fire school, this whole list of things. He's like, I wish I had that many things I spent my time on. He's like, I'm boring. But I think, to your point, if no one tells people that, they will forever just, even kids nowadays, I don't even think it's a generational thing. I think it got pushed to us as conceited or, arrogance, but I think now it's just the lack of self-encouragement has just kind of taken over with kids, that they don't know where to look for positive affirmations if no one shows up and kind of hands them to them.
It's a hard time to grow up, that's for sure. And your kids are younger than mine, but it's a challenge to get our kids through this social media world where, as you said, everything's comparison, and everybody can so easily attack you without being face to face. And it's a whole different world for our kids now. So it's added a whole new level to parenting, and how you teach your kids to just ignore those people and realize that what they are expressing says more about them than about who you are as a person. which is hard as a young person to accept.
Yep. Yeah, I spoke at Career Day at one of our local high schools a few weeks ago, and there was 3 of us on the panel. It was me, another guy who worked like in a similar industry, and then one of the assistant principals. And so this kid raises his hand and he said, "I have a question. Like, what should we chase when we grow up, money or happiness? Which is more important?" And like the other 2 looked at each other, and I about ran in front of them. I was like, "Oh, I will answer this one like hands down." And I said to him, "I don't ever want you to chase money." I said, "Money will show up when you are doing the things you love and making space and time for the things you love." I said, "It will be so easy to find things to do that will pay you." I said, "If you are happy because you have the amount of time you want in your life, the amount of space for the things you want to do, you can find lots of ways to make money besides your quote unquote day job." And from that conversation, we kind of went down the path of, well, but what if, like, what I see all these people, and I'm like, you see everybody on social media, you see their best day. You don't ever see their worst day, I promise, unless they want it for the likes and the views, and then they post the sad video. "Oh, my dog died. I lost my wedding ring." And so like social media, and let's be serious, I love social media. I use it the way I need to work on finding people, and getting my message across. But the other side of that, I think that so many people end up with is the doom scrolling and the, "Hey, listen, I am here solely because I need to look at someone else's life because I don't want to look at mine because I don't think it's good enough." And the more they find things to look at that are quote unquote better than them, the more they fall into the trap of thinking that their life is, getting worse and worse. So, yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute. As a mom, how do you teach your kids? Because I remember talking to you about your kids are pretty impressive kiddos with all they're doing. So how do you get that message loud enough in their head of, "Hey, listen, social media is a curated experience. Don't fall into the trap of
repetition.
Their life is better than
as
mine."
We all know, our kids don't listen the first time we say anything. We talk about it a lot, and we talk about those things in our house a lot. And I'm very open and honest with my kids about all of the hard things. And I think we do our kids a disservice when we are not open and honest about the hard things, and we try to make life look like it's all sugar coated and wonderful, because it's not. And then when they become adults, they're like, "Wait, nobody prepared me for this." So I have, that's the one thing that I think has changed how my kids have lived, is I am so real with them. And if I see it, a prime example, do you remember back when kids were eating Tide Pods and like dying? So when I heard about that, my son was probably 16, 17 about at that time. And at the dinner table that night with everybody there, I said, "So, have we heard about the Tide Pod eating thing?" And they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Just so you know, the Tide Pods out on the washer are not for you to put in your mouth. They have one purpose, and it is to go in the washer." And my son's like, "What are you talking about? Like, a woman, are you crazy?" And I said, "Well, apparently kids," I said, "college students are doing this because it's a challenge that was on TikTok or whatever." And I said, "I just want you to know, I'm being proactive. They are not to eat." He goes, "I already know that." I said, "You know what? I think the parents of the kids that are eating them probably thought their kids knew that too." So I talk about it. If I see, anything on social media, or they talk about it on social media, or so-and-so at school did this, we sit down and we have a conversation about it. And we say, what is wrong about this? How could that have been done better? Ask the hard questions and have the hard conversations, and keep it real. And I'm just going to say, I swear around my kids. A lot of people don't, but I said, if that's the worst thing my kids ever do, I'm fine, because we have the hard conversations, and,
right.
I'm like, you can say the things to me that you need to say. I've taught them that they don't go swear everywhere, but in this house, it's a safe place, and you get to say what you want, and I am not going to judge you, and I'm not going to get mad at you.
Yep. Yeah. And so I was going to say I have 2 rules for my kids. I have lots of rules for my kids, but two of the things that I make sure they always know are, one of them, I never lie to them. I told them there's a line in To Kill a Mockingbird that Atticus Finch says something to the effect of, don't ever lie to a kid because they can sniff out a lie a lot better than any adult on the planet ever. So since they were very little, I said, and I've told them I won't lie to you. I may explain something to you a little bit more different, a little differently than I would, another adult, because it might be something that's a tough topic or sensitive, but I won't lie to you. And the other thing is that I tell them things that I know they already know. Like you said, your son said, yeah, I know we don't eat Tide Pods, but I've said stuff to my kids and my daughter will look at me and she'll be like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, I know you know. I don't care if you know, I'm going to tell you anyway. So if there's ever a question in your mind about it, you will hear my nagging voice in the back of your brain saying, no, remember what I told you? I know you know, but I'm still going to say it anyway. And I think, like, even adults, I think a lot of it, like, not necessarily eating Tide Pods. Well, I'm sure there are some adults who might have eaten them. But I think the repetition and that voice, so many people lack that, I think, in their life. Because as adults, right, our parents, we obviously have much different relationships with our parents when we're adults, but they lose that reminding voice to say, hey, listen, this is your best foot forward. And it goes hand in hand with that belief in yourself. Like, it's okay to believe in yourself. It's okay to think that you're doing well. Like, it's not a bad thing. It's not conceited if you say, hey, I remember so-and-so told me I could do X, Y, and Z, and I still believe that. And, some notes I jotted down a long time ago about, like, every little kid in the world gets asked, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And when they say, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a doctor, whatever it is, doctor, plumber, electrician, nobody ever tells a 2-year-old, like, oh, that's a bad idea. But somewhere along the line, when they get to be 25, 30, even like 17, 18 years old, all of a sudden there is this whole faction of voices in their life that when they say, I want to do X, they a lot of times hear, oh, that's stupid. You can't do that. That won't work. You won't be successful. And I said, we should fast forward or rewind back to like when they were 3. And if somebody says to you, I want to start my own construction business, and you're like, listen, you're a 17-year-old kid with no experience, like, it's never going to work. Instead, if you said, all right, what color excavator do you want to buy? Like that mentality of, yes, you can, I promise, has faded away. And I don't know if it's a voice thing, if it's a personality thing, if it's a work thing. I think a lot of times people want the quick fix. That's another awful thing that social media does, is like, hey, I made one Canva slide and, sent it to 5 people and it made me $600,000. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Like, I promise you didn't. And we've erased like the hard work out of grinding away at doing something. And a friend of mine, I said something one day, I was talking about like mindset, and I used the word manifesting. And they're like, you're not the manifesting type. They were like, we know you pretty well. You are the hard work, like never afraid to show up and like do what needs to be done kind of person. And they were like, nothing against the people who want to manifest stuff, but they said there's a lot of energy and effort that goes into making yourself successful. And you should be proud of that. You shouldn't be ashamed of that. You should be proud of the fact that you are willing to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and spend 2 hours on your personal laptop before your workday starts, trying to make sure that your own business is going well. And Jim Rohn has a quote from years ago that says, learn to work harder on yourself than you do at your job. And I think that voice went away for a lot of people, which is sad. But I'm glad there are people like you in the world.
And isn't that what manifesting is, though? I'm going to challenge you. Is it manifesting, envisioning the goal, and then working to get to it? Isn't that really what it is?
Yeah. And I think the hard work part, I think, was my friend's point of like, listen, don't say that you're the type of person who just thinks about something until it comes true. Like, you are the boots on the ground. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about that. So you are obviously a voice and a net force for good in this world. What do your speaking workshops and your speeches?
I talk about mindset and mental wellness, and again, the self-love part, and a lot of the things we're talking about here today. When you talked about, looking at your 3-year-old self, I talk about our 5-year-old self and the things that we say to our adult selves. Would you say that to your 5-year-old self? Or any 5-year-old. And then I flip it and talk about how wouldn't that little 5-year-old be so proud of who you are today? And that really gets people when we think about it from that perspective is, no matter if your life looks like if you wanted to be the firefighter and you're not the firefighter, but you are something and you reached a lot of goals and you did a lot of cool things. And, just adulting is a pretty big accomplishment these days. So I really talk about that and our mindset and our inner thought processes and how they affect our daily lives, and whether it's our success in relationships or our success in our businesses or work. It all comes down to the thoughts that are inside our heads.
Yep. Yeah. And so one of the something you said reminded me of a video. I didn't know what I was doing when I joined TikTok, probably like most people our generation. COVID happened. I was like, this might be a good idea, but it's probably not. But one of the very first videos I recorded, something that somebody said struck a nerve with me, because it was a comment on just another TikTok creator's page. And it was so negative and so troll-ish. And I said, we should get back to the 1990s pre-social media mentality of how we speak to people. And you said, would you say that to your 5-year-old self? The video I made talked to the point, there was probably 3 people in the whole world that I would say something negative to and try to correct them. Like, hey man, I hate your shoes, or you really need to go get a different haircut. It was my brother, our best friend, Brian, and maybe my dad, if I wasn't afraid that he'd look at me and I would run terrified because, my dad was not scary, but please don't misunderstand me. He's a fantastic person. But that was the only time I would ever say that. But I'm now that people can hide behind phones and keyboards, they say all these awful things to people. And unfortunately, that's the driving force a lot of times in that negative message is everywhere they go. And like you said before about your kids, there is no escaping it. When I was a kid, I got my fair share of bullying because I was super heavy when I was younger. But when I got home from school, nobody could get to me. Nobody could say the awful things to me. Nobody could make the fat jokes. Nobody could pick on my clothes because I was home in a safe place with my parents and my family. And now that whole barrier has been torn down, and there is no more shield for kids nowadays. And so I think I didn't get mad, but I got frustrated one day. I was listening to somebody speak to a group of kids, and they used the, when I was your age phrase. And I said, I get it. I've used it before too, with my kids, there was no tech, there was no cell phones. You had to be bored on car rides. I said, but unfortunately, as much as they don't understand what it was like when we were their age, we will never understand what it is truly like to be their age. We will never understand what it's like to be a 16 or a 14 or a 13-year-old kid trying to navigate the murky waters of middle school with a device in their pocket that allows all of their friends 24-hour access to say whatever they want to them, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. And we won't, we can be empathetic and try to talk to our kids about it, but we won't ever walk that walk. So we don't. No,
and I think that's why I've tried to give my kids those tools from a young age of how to, believe in themselves and not believe in what all these other people say, and to believe that they can be successful beyond that. And my youngest daughter is a prime example. We were talking about our kids. I was thinking about this, but when her brother was sick, she was in 7th grade, and, they had kind of homeschooled because it was COVID, but she could have gone back to school in September. And I said, no, your brother has zero immunity. You're not going to that germ pit. So I signed her up for this homeschooling program that's actually based in the US. And she was able to do it quite independently because it's watching videos and then doing assessments. And I handed her a Chromebook and I said, I've already done grade 7. I'm not doing it again. Here is your login information. If you screw this up, you're screwing your own life up, not mine. And she essentially, as a 12-year-old, homeschooled herself while I'm sitting an hour away in my truck in a hospital parking lot. And she did a phenomenal job. She went back to public school in grade 8 and was ahead of most of her peers in every subject. And then fast forward to this year, just at the end of January, she's in grade 11. And she said, Mom, this school thing's too much. I can't do any work because the kids are loud and obnoxious and the teachers can't do anything with them. The stories we hear all the time. And she said, can I go back to homeschooling? And I said, that's a big choice because you're not going to get prom and you're not going to get a graduation ceremony and all those things. Because if you go to homeschooling now, you're going to have to do it for the rest of high school. And she said, no, I want to do it. So that was the end of January. 6 weeks later, remember, she's only in grade 11. but she pounded out enough courses that she got accepted to university a year earlier than if she had stayed in public school, into the program of her choice, a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture at one of the biggest universities in Canada. And I'm just so proud of her. And it's about instilling that belief in your kids that they can do the hard things and they can be successful. And she didn't doubt it for a second. She was just like, no, all right, I'm doing this. And she worked 2 jobs while she was doing this homeschooling and did 6 courses in 6 weeks. Whenever she wasn't at work, she was doing school. So it's the belief that you put in your kids that allow them to be able to do the really amazing things. And, she's not perfect and I have to be the mean mom sometimes. But she believed in herself and she believed in one of my friends who is not my friend anymore. She said, what are you teaching her? You're not teaching her how to deal with difficult people. I said, no, she's dealt with the difficult people. I'm teaching her that she doesn't have to sit in a room, be forced to sit in a room with people who have zero respect for her. And she's not allowed to leave. She's not allowed to talk back to them. The teachers and principal won't do anything about these kids or are saying terrible things. And she can't learn in that environment. So no, I'm teaching her to take initiative and look after herself. And she did. And it's just phenomenal to watch how she has blossomed from the end of January till now.
Yeah. And hats off to her. And, that's removing yourself from a situation that you don't want to be in. Unfortunately, for our generation, for us, was never an option. There was no such, technology didn't exist to allow us to do schooling any other way than show up and sit in the classroom. And I was right there with her. When I was a kid, I always joked that in high school, I think I was better friends with the teachers than I was with the rest of the students because, they were loud and disruptive and, their weekends were how much can we drink in somebody's field and then we can show back up at school. I mean, not all of them, obviously, but there was such a tone of, everybody's just trying to get through high school to get to something better. And now I think that allowing kids, 2 things. One, they have the means to do something differently or in better in their eyes, at least when it comes to things like online schooling or homeschooling. Some schools now at least have also said, hey, listen, if you want to take more classes online in addition to your regular schoolwork, you can do things like apply to college early. And the other part of that is that belief and instilling in kids that they can be anything they want. They can be successful. They can take the hard things head on and do them and succeed at them. And also reminding them they don't have to be one thing forever. That was another thing I think that the message when I was in college or when I was in high school, I went to college because all my friends were going to college. I went to college because my brother went. And then when they said pick a major and I was 17, I was like, for the rest of my life, it seems so permanent and so forever that I think I love reminding young people in this world that you can be dozens of different things. And if I look at my own life since the day I graduated high school and then went to college, all the different jobs I've had, it's way more than the 2 that maybe my dad or my grandfather had. You went somewhere to work and you stayed there for 35 years, you left. And unfortunately, it was a job you probably liked kind of enough and they treated you mostly okay. And the money you made was kind of enough to get by. And I think changing that message and changing the narrative for kids these days is so important to tell them, hey, listen, you don't have to stick to one thing forever. If you do something for 5 years and you don't like it, like your daughter, she went back to school and said, hey, this isn't for me. I like the other way better.
And we have to talk too about what does success look like for you, which is really hard to determine as a teenager because you think it's about having the money and the fancy cars and the fancy house. But, at my age now, I'll be 52 next month. And I'm like, success to me is freedom and independence and that I can go sit on my back deck in the quiet and nobody bother me for an hour if I want. That's success to me. So it's how do we define that? And I think as we raise our kids, they think it's a lot about money and the things, but it's really about the lifestyle that you want to live and the ability to do the things that bring you joy beyond your work, and your work should bring you joy too.
Yep. Yeah. And I've heard, more than one celebrity say if your goal is to be the richest person in the world, like that's a terrible goal, because there is an upward limit where like eventually you have enough money, you can eat at all the fancy restaurants, you can buy a nice car, like that. You don't have to be the richest person in the world to have that happen, but to be the richest person in the world, or even to be like the very best at something, so you can say, oh, I make more money than every other person in the industry who does this. Like that takes so much sacrifice that not very many people would actually want to do it. But success, to your point, taking time, and I've unlocked a lot of this in my own life with I've been dumping things off my plate left and right, between the town boards, the town committees, resigning from the things that take up my time. I think it's helpful to teach, well, and even adults this too, not just kids, people in the working world, that there are things that take up our time and there are things we can use our time for, and they are not the same. I can use my time to better myself, to listen to a podcast, to, reach out to someone about speaking, to go for a walk, to get some exercise, to spend time with my kids. I am bettering myself and doing things and having the freedom to do things that make me happy. Things that, steal our time, or that we, those things we have to do. Eventually you get to a point where you're just handing out so much of your time that there's none left for you actually to do anything you want to do. And that's why when that kid asked at career day, should I chase success or happiness? I'm like, or money or happiness? I said, never chase money. Because I said, I have friends who are millionaires, legit millionaires, and they're miserable because they work 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Legit, they're a good friend of mine. His mom calls him on Christmas and begs him to come to Christmas dinner because he's working. And she's like, can you spare like maybe 2 hours? He's like, yeah, I'll give you like 40 minutes, tops. And yes, does he have a lot of money? Absolutely. He's loaded. He's got, anything he wants to buy, he buys. He has equipment and vehicles and houses through the roof. But he said to me one day, you don't want to be like me. He said, Todd, you go on vacation every single year with your family. He goes, that's not in my cards right now. He said, that's not an option. And I think that reminding people that freedom to do what you want to do with their own time goes a long way in allowing you to be successful without saying, oh, the dollar will make me successful. But that was a generational thing. Everybody wanted to be rich and, successful because they thought, money and listen, money, Rita Davenport said money's not all that important, but it's right up there with oxygen. Right. So that is definitely part of success. However, I think a lot of people miss the message of like, hey, money and time.
Yeah. And that's a conversation I've had with so many people, because sort of a different topic, but I've been single for 13 years. I haven't even been on a date for a lot of years, and people are like, oh my gosh, like you must be so lonely and alone. And I said, no, like I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. I said, I've built this life that I said is so full and fulfilling that I actually have the best life, better than I ever did when I was with a partner. And most married people look at me with this like stunned look on their face and go, I can't say my life is full and fulfilling. And so that's why I do what I do, because I want people to be able to say that no matter where they are in their life or what their marital status is, but to be able to have a full and fulfilling life and to be able to build that for yourself. And that's what has been my focus while raising my kids and going through all the hard things, is how do I build a life that, when I get home at night, I can go, yes, this was a great day. Even when there was really hard things in it, there's always something good.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I've always said there's not good. Every day is not a good day, but there's good in every day. And I think the other day I was talking to someone. They said, "Oh, what are your goals for your speaking business?" And I said, I have a goal list like everybody else, but about 2 months ago, I think, I rewrote the goals and I said, I don't want to have goals. I want to have a vision. I don't want to have a goal for check the box. I want to do 10 speeches this year. Check. I changed that narrative for myself anyway, and I would encourage other people to do it too. Of what does your vision look like? Why are you doing what you're doing? And even if it's not, so like for me as a speaker, my vision is to imagine how amazing the world could be if there are people in this world who are happy with what they can do with their time. They wake up in the morning excited for their day. They go to bed at night satisfied. They are not burned out. They are not overwhelmed. They are not depleted. They believe in themselves. They believe in the possibility that life can be good for them. especially the people who thought that life couldn't be for them. Think of how much we could literally shift the culture of whatever community or the entire nation, the world, take your pick. When people stop giving into the fact that, oh, my life just has to be this way because it's just it is what it is. It's the way it is. It's the way it's going to be forever. And that, like, my goal used to be, I want to help people. And I said, no, I don't just want to help people. I want people to understand that, because I was in a place that I was burned out, worn. Nothing was exciting to me anymore. Even the things, the organizations that I was part of that I used to be excited about, there was no excitement tied to them anymore. It was always just, another meeting, another commitment, another event. And, I was handing out little pieces of myself, and eventually I was going to just hand them all out, and there'd be nothing left to give back to my kids and my family and whatever else. But so that vision or that change from a goal to a vision, I think, can do a lot of good things. But I think so often people get lost in the fact that they don't have any other choice except for it to be this way. And that's so far from the truth. And I had another thought
all
that
the
was
time.
connected
I
to this
usually
one.
forget why I pick up my phone, but I can remember
right
song lyrics from the 90s. Yeah. And I think, to your point, for me, it's not about how much money I can make. I do want the money. Obviously, I have to pay bills and I'd like to do the fun things. But for me, it's what impact can I make, not just on my own life to make my life better, make me a better person, but to help other people make their lives better and be better people. And that just, as you influence one people to think better and do better and be more open-minded, then they're going to influence someone else. And that impact just keeps snowballing into something huge. And I always say, I want to be like Oprah, not because she's a billionaire. That would be really cool. But because Oprah had such a positive impact on so many people. And she was able to do that by her messaging and by her words, which then led to the money. To your point earlier is, she didn't start wealthy. She, started in a really terrible upbringing, and she started just being authentic and real and helping people. And that led to helping more and more and more and more. And that's the impact that I want to have in this world. And that's why I tell the hard stories, and I'm really real about things that have happened in my life and said, you know what, these terrible things can happen, but life can still be amazing.
Yep. Well, I think that might be a good note to follow to end on. So we've talked about a lot of things. So if you had the world stage, pretend Todd
it's coming.
Is now the podcast, like, right up there with Joe Rogan's. If you had one message, it's coming. That's true. It's got to someday. I'm going to call Joe and next, and see if he wants to be a guest next. We'll see how it goes. If you had, I would tell them to look in the mirror and say, I deeply and completely love myself every single day, because those words will change everything else you do that day. I love it. I love it. Yes, they will. They will. And I think as we leave, guys, a reminder from myself and from Karen that you need to believe in yourself and the power you have to control your own life day by day. It's not somebody else's ship to steer. It's yours. And, that was the thing I did a lot of times too, was I just drifted and I didn't do the self-love. I didn't remind myself that I was in control of my own day. So, all right, you guys, from myself and from Karen, thank you so much for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And as always, I hope you appreciate the message. Take care, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to Todd Talk. If you've liked what you've heard, please go ahead and subscribe and follow along so you don't miss any updates or new episodes. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.